Hello and welcome to Addicted to Lacrosse, Season 3, Episode 6. Today is Monday, February the 8th, 2016. My name is Graham Perro. With me tonight is Tyler Fitch. Melissa was not available this evening. We had to move our show from yesterday because we didn't want to take viewership away from the Super Bowl, so we decided to move to Monday. And Melissa's not available on Monday, unfortunately, so it's just me and Tyler tonight. A few things to talk about. The Rock made a bunch of moves, so we'll take a look at those. We have an update. They just made a move. I just read about it, so that'll be interesting. An update on Tyler Richards' situation we talked about last week. A bunch of interesting games to talk about, and then our predictions at the end as well. Off the top, some movement in the Toronto Rock camp. First of all, I think it was on Monday last week, Dan Ladouceur was let go, who was the assistant coach, the defensive assistant coach. Excuse me. Jamie Dowick said that he didn't blame Ladouceur for the problems. It wasn't his fault. But the quote that he made was, "Being in the position we're in, I felt making him change was necessary." Now, that sounds to me like we got to do something. I can't fire half the team, so I'll fire one of the coaches, which sounds kind of like a desperation move. And I suppose when you're 0-5 and have never been 0-5 in the history of the franchise, it's time for a desperation move. I don't know, desperation moves to me tend to not work out very well. And when you think about the fact that the major problem with the Rock this year is that they couldn't score, firing the defensive coach doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. So that's what's happened. The news that just came down a minute ago or a few minutes ago was that, not terribly surprising, Matt Sawyer was named the new defensive coach. He's been an assistant coach with the Rock for a long time. He actually took a bit of a break when the Boston Blazers came to the league and was the head coach there for a couple of years. And then when the team vanished, he came back to the Rock, and he's been assistant coach ever since. So now he will be their defensive coach. He'll actually be on the bench. Usually he's just a sort of a behind-the-scenes guy. So John Lovell had said that he's worked with Sawyer for years. He's got a high lacrosse IQ, and they get along well. He knows the players. He knows the system. So it's really not that surprising a move for the Rock to make. So that was their... Sorry, Tyler, go ahead.
Yeah, so Graham, he knows the players. He knows the system. So what I'm hearing is they've gone 0-5 with the system, so they're not changing it, which is a little iffy. And Steven Stamp had a great thought around who's going to replace Ladouceur. And the clear choice was bringing Matt Sawyer in, because, again, he's comfortable with everybody. He's just basically being promoted from an assistant coaching role, not on the bench. But how do you fire up the players to respond if it's not really a new voice? So it'll be very interesting to see if everything they hope to happen happens on both sides of the floor, really, because as you said, it wasn't just defensive issues, but now they have a new defensive coach who's not that new, and will it cause radical change amongst the players in their effort and output?
Yeah, I guess from that point of view, it does seem like an odd idea that if you're going to fire a coach because your team isn't playing well, you want to bring in somebody that is going to shake things up, is going to do things differently. And if Sawyer's going to come in and say, well, this is what we've been doing all along, that's what we're going to keep doing, what was the point of making the coaching change? I also read Steven Stamp's column this morning, and he did mention one of the drawbacks of promoting Sawyer to this role is that you're not going to get any fresh ideas. Now, maybe Sawyer had lots of fresh ideas and Ladouceur didn't like them, and so they didn't implement them. That would seem unlikely, but yeah, maybe he'll come in with a few different ideas. He's not going to shake things up entirely, but maybe do things a little bit differently.
But it is also the defensive system that got him to the finals last year, so maybe the issue wasn't with the system.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and as we said, the main problem with the Rock was the offense. Now they did score 17 last week, so I mean it's hard to say that problem solved. But at the same time, they only allowed 12 goals in the first 4 games, which is not outstanding, but it's usually enough to keep you in the game at least. Um, and then they allowed 20 last week. So um, yeah, maybe Ladouceur just wasn't getting along with Dowick somehow, and Dowick sort of took this opportunity to say, okay, we're going to make that change. It may not have anything to do with the team or the record, but at least I don't have to deal with Ladouceur anymore. That's a total guess, but yeah, I guess we'll see next weekend. Now, problem is they made a few other changes this weekend, so it's not exactly a controlled experiment. The biggest one is the return of Josh Sanderson. He did say before the season that he was going to try and get in shape and enough to rejoin the team and be productive this year. He did kind of say, being 37, 38, whatever age he is, that may not be possible. And if so, then, I've enjoyed my time in the league and so on. I kind of thought that would be it for Sanderson, but I am happy to be wrong. Apparently he will be playing this Sunday. Yeah, so that is now, again, we don't want to say there, Josh is back, all the problems are solved. Because we kind of thought that when Colin Doyle was going to return. And if we're going to lose Josh, but we're going to get Colin back, well, maybe that's kind of a wash, but it doesn't seem to be. But we'll see what happens on Sunday. A few other smaller moves. The Rock also released Glenn Bryan and signed Jamie Batson to the active roster. Batson played with the Bandits. I think he played for 1 game this year. He was on the Rochester Nighthawks for a year or 2 before that. Batson is possibly infamous for being the other guy in the Joe Resetarits deal. Resetarits went to the Nighthawks and has been really good. Batson went to the Bandits and was a healthy scratch a bunch of times and played 1 game and got released. So that was a bit of a one-sided trade for the Nighthawks. But in any case, Batson's still fairly young. I think he's maybe 30. And another defender. So maybe they didn't like what they were seeing from Glenn Bryan and decided to add somebody new. And so with those changes, with Sanderson and a new defensive coach, we'll see what happens on Sunday. Update on what we talked about last week. Tyler Richards was added to the, I don't remember what it was called, the active evaluation list or something, by the Vancouver Stealth. And we were speculating that the Stealth were desperate for goaltending help, and so they reached out to T. Rich, and he said, yeah, sure, okay. And so they put him to be evaluated. Teddy Jenner updated us all on the Off the Crossbar podcast last week, and explained what had happened. I guess he basically just gave Doug Lockhart a call and said, so what's going on? And so the deal is Richards voluntarily asked to be put on the retired list, which is what you do when you retire. But because he volunteered to be put on the retired list rather than the team doing it, he is allowed to request that the team take him off of that list. And so apparently this was all initiated by Richards, not by Locker. So he contacted the team, said, I'm feeling good, I'm ready to play, put me back on the evaluation list. And so they were obliged to do that. And presumably there's some kind of medical involved. A doctor or a couple doctors have to look at Richards and say that, yeah, he's cleared to play. But the Stealth have opted not to sign him. So they have taken him off of that list. They have basically released him. He is now a free agent. And I've heard nothing since. Tyler, have you heard anything?
Nope, nothing since then as well. If some team has an injury, I think they could maybe give him a call, but I don't think any team would just replace, and any of the other 8 teams would replace their existing goalies for T. Rich at this point. So I don't know, still stuck on his head issues and glad he's not playing. Maybe he'll come back in the summer Those teams will be a little less picky, as they don't all have great goaltenders necessarily, and he'll get a shot there. I don't know, but I don't know if it. The story all says T-Rich came to do this, and maybe it lit a little fire under Eric Penny's performance this weekend, but it was it's done, I guess, and maybe he'll come back for somebody else, but for right now there's nothing more. He can stay retired, and now he's involuntarily retired. And that's my thoughts there. Ready to move on to the games?
Yep. One more thing I want to say about Richards. I'm with you. The head injury thing is still a big issue for me. And as much as I like Richards and would love to see him play again, I'm kind of glad that he is retired, because that's just the safest thing to do when you've had the history of concussions that he's had. Especially when you're a goaltender, it's just safer to not play with fire and try that again. And if we were conspiracy theorists, we might take your suggestion and run with it and say maybe this was Tyler's way of firing up Eric Penny and saying, hey, if you don't pull up your socks, I'm coming back. And Penny said, all right, that's not happening. I'm going to play my best. And he played a great game. But we will get to that momentarily. First game to talk about, Saskatchewan 19, Calgary 12. I saw bits of this one, but not an awful lot. Zach Greer had 7 goals in this one, 6 in the first half, and those 6 were in less than 5 minutes. The last 5 were in a row, and they were in less than 3 minutes. Just unbelievable. Ben McIntosh scored a goal in between there. Otherwise, he would have had a natural sock trick. I don't know if that's ever been done in the history of the NLL, but that's pretty damn impressive. So nice job, Mr. Greer. I don't have much else to say about the game itself, because like I said, I didn't see much of it. I did notice the attendance was 9,580, which is the highest of the season for the Rush, which is great. It's nice to see. They started off pretty good. They went down a little bit in the second game, but not a ton. And then third game, they're right back up again, higher than the first. So that's really good to see. And if they can keep that kind of stuff up, then the Rush will do pretty well in Saskatoon, I think. Tyler, did you see this game?
Yeah, fun game to watch. That basically series or few minutes by Greer was unbelievable. Just anything on net was good to go. And he came out in the second half just still ripping shots, and it didn't quite fall the same way, but still he was in a great groove. I love seeing the attendance, but now they've had 3 home games, like 5 weeks into the season, maybe 6 weeks into the season, and they only get 5 more in the next 12 weeks. So hopefully there's no long gap coming up. I don't have their schedule in front of me to see if they have like a month off in the middle of the season, so they're all front-loaded home games. That'd be unfortunate, because they're getting in people's minds. They're growing, and then if they disappear, they'll be sad. But they seem to be the hot thing in Saskatoon for sports fans, and that's awesome that they found that location and are marketing it well and growing. For the game, I wish the game had been a little bit closer, so that the Roughnecks would have put out more energy and then been more tired the following night against Georgia, and could have had 2 losses, so still would have better standings in the better spot in the standings. But I'll take what I can get. Curtis Dixon's goal was just phenomenal, and a short man. He was kind of just drove towards the net. They threw a high pass to him that he reached up and grabbed, and then had it on one hand, player behind him, player in front of him, hopping on 1 foot and dunked the shot in. It was amazing. One of the coolest things I've seen him do, and he's got a lot of highlights. But other than that, and boy, Rush are, I don't know, that loss to the Stealth is a little bit of an oddball now, because they're starting to roll again. Just had maybe to get things figured out But they look good. What's next?
It does look like the Rush are starting to turn into the Rush that we've seen in the last couple of years. It kind of looked like 2 years ago when they started off 15-0, 14, 15. I think it was 15-0. That was the super ultra dominant Rush. Next year they weren't quite as dominant, but still pretty darn good. Obviously, they won the championship. This year, same sort of thing. Not quite as dominant, but still up near. They're going to be up near the top. We all know that. Yeah. So next game was an interesting one. I did see most of this one. New England and Buffalo. This was what do they call it? Champions Night in Buffalo. And before the game, I didn't see this. I don't think it was on the. Actually, I tried to watch it on the broadcast, but they weren't broadcasting it. So they had a whole bunch of Bandits alumni from previous years come back. Of course, the Bandits have been around for 25 years, so they have all kinds of people to choose from. And some of them are behind the bench, so we didn't see Sean Williams, we didn't see John Tavares, but there's an awful lot of familiar names, and even for me, I mean, I've been following the league for 12 years or 15 years, holy cow, for a while now, but there's a lot of names in there I didn't recognize from previous years to that. And then they had a bunch of them playing a pickup game at halftime, which was pretty cool to watch. They didn't have any announcing going on there, but you could watch the game going on, and that was pretty good to watch, actually. The goalie for one of the teams was Bill Gary, and I think they said he was 59. He was, turning 60 soon, and had to borrow equipment because he probably hadn't played goal in 20 years or 10 years or something. So, yeah, so that was pretty interesting to watch.
That halftime game was amazing because I just had it on the TV and my wife wasn't paying attention, but then she starts looking over and she goes, boy, they got to catch those passes. Like, this is really sloppy play for these guys. That's the first thing she notices. And then she goes, wait a second. That guy doesn't have a helmet on. He can't play without a helmet. This game is outrageous. Another 10 seconds. This isn't the game, is it? It's like, no, this is the halftime.
Something's wrong with this picture.
Yeah. Then she figured out that was the halftime expo. But yeah, the way she watches the games is different than most. As she's just railing on the people. Like, these guys are pros. They got to make that pass and catch. He's breaking the rules. Oh.
Yeah, I thought the same thing a couple times that, this guy's, he doesn't have his chin strap done up. I don't think that's legal, but he played in the era when nobody had their chin strap done up, so that's what he's used to.
Yeah, then the radio broadcast, was it Randy Mearns or Rick Mearns? Somebody Mearns.
Randy Mearns, yep.
Randy Mearns. He's the color guy, and he was playing in the game. So in the second quarter, they're talking about, well, the guy next to me is putting on his gear right now so he can go play. Like, that doesn't happen in a lot of sports.
Yeah, that was pretty wild. And he went down, he played in the game, and came back up, and right away you got a bit of a behind the scenes of what was happening. And the guys, things you don't think about, like they were running around the floor, they'd score a goal, and then they'd look up at the Jumbotron to see a replay of the goal. Well, that wasn't there 20 years ago when I played. That wasn't even available. So they're back to playing the game that they've been playing their whole life, but there's an awful lot of it that's different. And of course, they weren't playing in the First Niagara Center or HSBC Arena or whatever other names it's been. They were probably 2 or 3 arenas ago in Buffalo. Yeah, so that was pretty cool. As for the game itself, I looked at this beforehand and saw a couple of announcements shortly before the game and thought, hey, I picked New England in this game. I'm set. No Ryan Benesh, no Nick Weiss, no Anthony Cosmo, no problem. Well, it turns out to be no problem for the Bandits. They took off. There was, let me just pick it up here. Where did it go? Yeah, New England scored first, and then Buffalo scored, 8 of the next 9 goals or something. They were up 8-2, took an 8-3 lead into halftime, and looked like they were on their way to just cruising to a victory. And I liked what you said on Twitter, Tyler, about, well, they have a whole bunch of alumni there who have all won championships, or a good portion of them. And the last thing they want to do is lay an egg on the floor and go to the post-game party with all these champions saying, yeah, we lost the game.
I think it's a great motivator.
It certainly motivated them for the first half. Second half was a different story, though. New England came out, scored a couple of quick ones. Buffalo got it back, and they were up, 11-5 halfway through the third quarter. And then New England went on a little bit of a run, scored 5 in a row, and kept Buffalo off the board for 20 minutes. And with a minute and a half left, Kevin Crowley scores the goal that puts the Black Wolves down 11-10. Down by 1 with a minute and a half left in the Lacrosse game. Anything can happen. We all know that. So the last minute was a lot more exciting than Buffalo probably anticipated that it would be, given the halftime score. And then Kevin Brownell put it away with an empty netter with a couple seconds left. So it was pretty much over by then anyway. So the Bandits held on to win a much closer game than they were expecting to. So good job on the Black Wolves for sticking with it and coming back. Goals were spread around all over the place for them. It wasn't the Zach Greer show like in Saskatchewan, but Crowley and Saunders and Kyle Buchanan. I imagine Kevin Buchanan's in there someplace. So not since the first. Pat Saunders. Yeah, Sean Evans actually had a goal, believe it or not. But he's almost more of an assist guy now. He'll get his. Yeah. Well, when you're talking Evans, it's weird because he'll get his 40 goals, but he's mainly assists. And there's only a handful of other guys in the league who get the 40 goals, but they won't get the 80 assists to go with it. Yeah, so that was pretty interesting game. Did you see this one? I guess you did.
Yeah, I was able to watch almost all of it. Had to started switching with Georgia and Calgary towards the end because it looked out of hand. Like at halftime, I switched over to Georgia-Calgary and came back to this. Like, ooh, good action here. I don't know, not too much to add, man. They got New England got back within 1. Looking at the stat sheet, and they have New England has their big defender Bill O'Brien serving their in-home penalties, which is kind of interesting in my mind because he's a defender, and that's when you need your defenders is when you're short a man. So he might be a good 5-on-5 guy, but apparently when you're 4-on-5, he's not an asset they want out there because they'll just willingly send him to the bench instead of some forward. That was interesting. But that's I don't know about it. I had the exact same pick as you, and I saw no Benesh, no Cosmo, no Weiss. I was like, oh wow, good. Didn't pay out.
Not so much.
Yep. All right. How about Georgia and Calgary?
Georgia and Calgary. This was kind of the same thing, except not. Let's take a look at the numbers here. So Georgia gets out to this huge lead. First quarter was pretty close. Calgary was actually leading 3-2. Sorry, Georgia was leading 3-2 by the end of the first. And then Georgia scored 5 out of the 6 goals in the second quarter and took an 8-3 lead in halftime. And this kind of sounds like the Bandits game. And then Calgary started to come back. They scored 6 in the third. Tyler Digby had a couple. Curtis Dixon had a couple. Dane Doby, Dan McRae, Mr. Goal Scorer himself. Yeah, so they were spreading it around as well and got back to within 1 by the end of the third. The only difference between this game and the Buffalo game is that Calgary was able to actually do it. Curtis Dixon tied it up a minute into the fourth quarter. Randy Stotts gave Georgia the lead again, and then Tyler Digby tied it up. Actually, I was going to say just a couple minutes later. That was actually like 6 minutes later. So Georgia had the lead for most of the fourth quarter as well, and then Digby tied it up. And then Greg Harnett, another name we don't hear often on the goal scoring side of things, scored the game winner, and Calgary held on to complete their comeback. So again, same as the Black Wolves, nice job for Calgary to fight back, even though you're down by 6 at one point. They never gave up, and I guess that's something we've noticed from the Roughnecks for a couple of years, and it probably kind of ticks you off as a non-Calgary fan that they don't give up, and that was evident here, and it obviously paid off for them. So it was a nice game for the Roughnecks. 5 goals for Tyler Digby. Frankie Chiliano was not great. I think he only played, where did it go?
Yeah, he got pulled.
He played 22 minutes, but got 7 goals scored against him, so he wasn't playing great. And then Poulin came in, and Poulin was the old Poulin that we might have seen a few years ago.
The Poulin Wall.
A Poulin Wall, exactly. He did a great job. The last few minutes when Georgia was trying to come back after Calgary had finally taken the lead, Poulin was all over him. And it literally came right down to the last few seconds, and I think it was Miles Thompson, it might have been Lyle, but I can't remember which. One of them went right in on net with literally 3 or 2 seconds left on the clock, all by himself, and Poulin made an outstanding save to literally save the game. So yeah, that was pretty exciting. Yeah, did you watch this one?
Yep, was able to catch most of it. Definitely no quit in that Roughneck team. Even the night before in Saskatoon, they were down by quite a bit, but they never really stopped. They just keep trying to generate some offense. I think what we saw in this game that's different and can be definitely scary to all their future opponents is they really integrated Tyler Digby into the offense, and maybe he's kind of earned their trust over a month now of actual games. And like Curtis Dixon knows he's got another guy on the side with him who he can get the ball to and who can power through and generate some offense that maybe Dixon doesn't have to go do all the hard driving himself anymore. Evans really wasn't driving like that last year. He would get his shots kind of by picking his shots, but Digby's a big guy and he'll drive in. So between him and Dixon, teams have serious threats on that half of the floor to cover now. And they got a good thing going on. That down 9-3 in the third and getting the win, it was incredible swing of all momentum, and probably would have been great game to go to as a fan, because you just so low, like tripled us up 9-3, and then they start inching back and you get all excited, and big save at the end to seal the deal. Good fan experience being provided there. Yeah, that's my thoughts.
It's got to be interesting for Calgary to be readjusting their offense when you take out the 5'9", 175, 180 pound Sean Evans and replace him with, what is he, 6'3" and 220 or something, Digby?
Yeah.
It's got to be, and obviously the way they play is a little different as well, but that's got to be it's got to be fun for the offensive coaches to say, okay, well, yeah, we're losing the MVP, but this guy's going to add quite a different dynamic to our offense.
Yep, and he's still young. It's only his 3rd year, I want to say, so he's gonna have should have a lot longer shelf life than Evans had ahead of him. So could be a good long-term payout there.
And the last game of the weekend, Colorado's visit to Vancouver, and we all know what happened the last time Colorado went to Vancouver, and you weren't too pleased about it, if I remember correctly, on the show the next day. I imagine you're feeling better about this one.
Yes. Teddy Jenner mentioned that apparently all the Mammoth had the flu, which was awesomely timed for Stealth fans. I don't know. Like, either they were a step slow or just what the issue was, but they weren't disrupting any aspects of the Stealth offense. They could pass, easy shot sequences for several of their goals, which we haven't seen a ton of from the Stealth this year. So it was great to see them. I don't know, I wouldn't say well-oiled machine. They were absolutely clicking, and they had a great lineup out there. Still missing Cliff Smith from his head injury from the last time they played each other 2 weeks ago. But the 6 forwards they ran were just phenomenal and a good group of players. Defensively, they corrected a ton of mistakes. I think on the offensive end for the Mammoth is definitely where their apparent illnesses would wreck them, because if you're fatigued, you can't push on a guy to get open. You can't dodge for several steps at full speed to generate the shot you're trying to. And I think that is where they were most affected by it, the apparent illness. But Eric Penny had a great game, 85% save percentage, got the 3rd star league-wide award from Isle Indoor for the weekend. Just a superb performance. Don't know what it took to have him see the ball so well or find his motivation. We have that theory that, oh God, they're going to bring in T-Rich, I got to do it. But he knew T-Rich was coming in last week. He could have done this well in Calgary. He didn't do this well. But if that's, I don't want to say it's a ceiling for Penny, but if that's his potential for what a good night on, hopefully even an average good night would be, then that's why they've put him in there at this point to get the reps. And maybe he just had to see the team once because he never really had, and he'll get him from here on out. So lots of little things they'll play out throughout the season, but that's my best theory is he had to learn the team, learn the shooters. Maybe he hasn't seen them that much, and now that he has, he's got them dialed in. What's your thoughts on the game, Graham?
I was not able to see this one. This was on TSN Go in Canada, and the first 5 weeks of the season, I suppose, TSN Go was just available. You went to tsn.ca/lacrosse/ something or other, and the game was just there. You click on the Flash application, and there you are. And now they have a little lock icon there that says you have to log in with your cable provider. And as I've said on the show several times in the last few years, my cable provider does not subscribe to TSN Go, and therefore I can't. I've sent emails and tweets to TSN itself saying, please take my money. I want to get this, but I can't pay TSN for it. I have to get it through my cable provider. And I've been asking them for 1.5 years now, and they say, yep, we're working on it. But and I'm sure it's not a technical thing. There's some contract that needs to be signed, and they're trying to negotiate something. I'm assuming they are, as opposed to they're just not telling me they are. But in any case, I can't see it. And I probably give the same rant every time I can't see a game for that reason. So there's my first one for the year. There you go. But it certainly was, I imagine, a big confidence builder for the Stealth. I imagine last week was probably one as well. The fact that they lost, but they were in the game in Calgary was probably a bit of a confidence booster in that we played a good game. Yeah, we lost, but we played well. Whereas the previous couple of games we lost, but we didn't play well. This one, obviously, they did play really well. There were some saying that this was the best game the Stealth have played since they got to Vancouver. That might be the best home game they've played.
They had a great one last year against Calgary. I think Valentine's Day when I was up there, they just steamrolled Calgary. But yeah, they're so few and far between that people can't remember them.
And Teddy Jenner did ask, I wonder, like they were leading by 8 or something at this point, saying, I wonder if this is the biggest lead they'd had in the last 5 years. And so I took that as a challenge and I looked it up, and it's only been 10 games since they had a 5-goal lead, but that's 10 games. That's pretty good. Nice game by the Stealth. Obviously got their offense going. Held the Colorado scoring machine to only 7 goals, so that's pretty good job. As you said, Eric Penny had a great game as well. So things are looking pretty good in Vancouver. One thing that I want to mention just briefly that we were talking about just a second ago, Tyler Digby is 24 years old. He will be 25 in about a month, March the 12th. Sean Evans, this is his 11th season in the NLL. He's 29. Unbelievable. He'll turn 30 at the end of the season, April the 28th, which is my wife's birthday as well. So happy birthday. But the fact that he's been in the league that long and has been this good for, I mean, the last 3 or 4 years have just been outstanding for him. And he's still not even 30 yet. So if anybody might have a shot at the John Tavares type records, assuming he can survive long enough, it'll be Sean Evans. I mean, Grant is obviously up there as well, and I think Grant just passed 1,300 points or something this past weekend.
10 years older than him. That's one of the criteria. If somebody's going to catch Tavares, they got to play a long time, and I think they have to have not gone to college and or at least not played college ball so that they could then play in NLL. I think some of these guys still go to a secondary or whatever you want to call it up there, but he came into the league at 18, and you have to have all those years producing at a high level, and he came in producing quite well, playing with his brother in Rochester, so he had a good, and John Grant Jr., so all Peterborough boys who knew how to play each other, they just came up and hit the ground running. And I agree, anybody in the league is going to have a chance at Tavares' records. I think it's Evans. If he plays, he's got to play another 10 years at least, because it's a long. Tavares was 45, 46, and he hung him up.
46, yeah.
That'd be 16 more seasons of stats for the guy. So you more than double what he has right now if he's going to produce at a high level. Even if he doesn't produce at a high level, he's got that wiggle room. Double what he has right now, and if it's not at Tavares' level, then, oh my goodness, nobody's going to catch Tavares.
Now, Evans also has the advantage of playing in 18-game seasons instead of the 10 and 12-game seasons that Tavares had for most of his career.
Give him an asterisk. Doesn't count.
True enough. Yeah, so, I mean, John Grant is 40 now, I think. I think he's either 40 or 41. I'm pretty sure he's 40. And he still has, I think I did calculated the other day, I think it's 350 points behind Tavares. So he'd have to have 3 more 100-point seasons and then another 50, starting at age 40 to catch Tavares. So I mean, Grant's still playing at a pretty high level, so it's not completely out of the realm of possibility, but he'd have to have three or 4 John Grant type seasons, not just, cruising to the end of the career in order to catch Tavares. That's how far back he is.
Yep.
So on to our predictions. Last week, well, I guess it's been same old for the 3 of us. I was 2-2. Melissa was 2-2. Tyler was only 1-3. We all got the Saskatchewan game. Saskatchewan's win over Calgary. Correct. Melissa got Buffalo. I got Calgary and over Georgia, and that was it. So overall, Tyler is bringing up the rear at 8-15. I'm only a game ahead at 9-14, and Melissa is kicking our butts at 12-11. Okay, so we have our picks for this week. Melissa filled hers in, and they're almost the same as mine. Yours are mostly the same as mine as well.
I'm struggling on one.
Yeah, some of these were tough. I guess that's true every week. There's always at least one game where you just have no idea. So Melissa is still in the lead, so I'll start with hers. Saskatchewan and Colorado, she was going for the rush in that one. Rochester over Vancouver, Calgary over Colorado, and Buffalo over Georgia. And I'll go next. Mine are almost the same as hers. I'm also going with the rush.
There's one more on the page break.
Oh, did I miss one? There is a 5th game, Toronto and New England. How could I, as a Rock fan, forget about that one? Melissa picked New England for that one. Okay, so I'm going with the rush over Colorado as well. It seems unlikely given the 4-0 start from the Mammoth that they'd lose 3 in a row. But I guess I'm picking them to do that. Actually, it might be 4 in a row because they lost last weekend, the week before. And I'm picking them to lose against Saskatchewan, and I'm picking them to lose against Calgary. Not because I don't think Colorado's a good team. I think the Rush are a better team right now. Colorado's also without Dan Coates, and that's going to kind of mess up their defense, losing your captain. Vancouver, Rochester, I'm going with Rochester in this one. Like we said, Vancouver played a really good game last week, but this is Rochester, and it's in Rochester. So I'm going to have to give the nod to the Nighthawks on that one. Colorado and Calgary, as I mentioned, I'm going with Calgary. Buffalo, Georgia, this one was tough. Buffalo did win last week, but they didn't. They played really well for one half and just well enough to win in the second half. Georgia was kind of the opposite. They played really well for one half and just not quite good enough to win in the second half. But I think they'll rebound from that, and I'm going with the Swarm on that one. Toronto, New England. If this was any other team, I would say you got to prove it to me. At 0-5, I'm going to keep picking against you until you win. But this is the Toronto Rock, and I've been a Rock fan for 15 years. And I'm going to say that the coaching change is going to shake things up a little bit. The return of Josh Sanderson will help. I don't think he's going to be the solution to all the problems, but his addition, I think, will boost the team into a win. I'm going to go with the Rock on that one. Yeah, those are my picks. Tyler, what do you think?
Alrighty. Backing up to the top, Saskatchewan at Colorado. Boy. Yeah, started off 4-0, lost 2 in a row. I think they'll right the ship and get a win. The Mammoth will over the Rush. It'll probably be a great game, 1-goal game, as they frequently have in Colorado lately. Good close battle there, but they'll come out on top. Vancouver at Rochester. Rochester has not looked sharp to start the season, but Vancouver has to travel cross country, and I think that'll wear them down a little bit. Could be a good chance for the team to bond and come together and then come out and play a great game, but I'm not certain of that. And we'll figure out in this game, I think, if Rochester is going to be a legit threat this year. So if they stumble like they have against some other teams from the East and defense doesn't look sharp and protect Vince, then might have some worrisome things. But if they just play like we expect them to, historically, which isn't really fair, but historically they do great things with their D and Vince, they'll get the win there. Colorado at Calgary after being at home. Calgary's got a good thing going on at home. They clicked really well last weekend, and they can do that again against a team coming in from travel. That'll be rough on the Mammoth, and so I'll pick Calgary to win there. Buffalo at Georgia. Not sure if Benesh will be back yet, or Cosmo, I guess. Could be huge factors again, even though they weren't factors. They still won without him. I think Benesh is really key to their offense. And I just love seeing what Ed Camo's doing in Georgia with the young Swarm team. And unfortunately, I don't know if anybody will be there because it's going to be Sunday, Valentine's Day. Just atrocious time to host a game. But the arena probably is wide open. I think Georgia can get a win. And keep their good start going. And finally, Toronto at New England. This was my hardest pick. Toronto's either going to be totally reinvigorated from the new coaching change and maybe having Josh Sanderson back. But New England's got some great big defenders. They've already beat Toronto this year, and I think they'll do it again. I think my actual prediction here is that Sanderson will dress for warm-ups but not actually play in the game. I think they've got to ease him back in a little bit somehow. Something like that will play out. Maybe he'll come in, but if he comes into the game, I think he'll struggle a little bit against a big physical team like the Black Wolves. So those are my picks there.
All right. I guess that brings this edition of Addicted to Lacrosse to a close. So addictedtolacrosse.com is where you want to go for all of our old episodes. You can get a hold of us at Lax Podcast on Twitter, Lax Podcast on Facebook, or feedback at addictedtolacrosse.com if email is what you want to do. That's about it. This has been another episode of Addicted to Lacrosse. For Tyler and the absent Melissa, I'm Graham. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.